I wanted to do a abdomen, how to create the abdomen on a bead chain streamer, and just the abdomen section of this. I have here a alligator clamp that I got from my local hardware store, and then I have some bead chains. These are huge. These are at least 3/16 of an inch bead. Look at the stem in between each of those beads. I've taken one of the beads and I've sanded it down so that you could see the line, the seam line on that bead. And you take your side cutters and crush that right on that seam, and it exposes the stem. And the reason you need that stem, you're going to at both ends, you're going to use that to attach to the hook as well as attach your tail. Now see, once again, on the stem, crush it, and then it is exposed. You can do it on the other sections of it if you mess up, but it's a little harder to take off. But as you saw, it comes right off. The bead itself comes off. Now, taking these jaws, I'm going to expose the stem, and we'll lay down a base of thread. The thread here is Uni 17-aught white. I could have used white, black, but I just like this stuff because it's got no buildup, and it picks up the color of whatever's around it, so it's pretty easy to use. I'm pinching the jaws right here, and then laying down the base a little bit better. Now, I've got my feathers already picked out off of a badger cape, and this is just the tail, so I've cut a V into it. Now, I should warn you that these don't lay down very well because I don't have access to that whole stem, but I will do the best that I can. I've actually got two feathers I'll put on each side of that stem, and this tail wiggles like a son of a gun. Now, I should warn you also that this tail feather gets really beat up from fish nipping at it. So don't be surprised. It just drives them fish crazy. All right, so I'm positioning my tail feathers as best I can. It's a little bit better. Now, as you can tell, I'm tying this backwards, so I'm putting we'll switch it back to more conventional, but I'm tying to the back. So I'm cutting off my stems, and I've got two feathers, and I've preened back the fibers and then exposed just the tips, and I'll tie it in by the tips. Right there, I'm pinching the jaws just so that the stem will stay still for a bit so I can get a better grasp. The thread can plant better. Now I'm just going to take them by the stems with my hackle pliers and preen them to the back. Well, that's the direction I want to go back to the right. And just wrap. No big deal. I'm going to capture those stems and then tie it off with the thread. Trim off my excess. And whip finish. Now I don't put very many wraps because I also know I'm dropping a little bit of a super glue on here. Now what I have here is a 27 gauge needle, and it'll create a micro drop of super glue. And what that is because it's so small, it doesn't migrate. And you know how super glue will turn white because it hits any moisture? Well, there's just enough glue here. It'll hold it in place, lock it in place, and it doesn't migrate all over. Now I'm going to take this whole bead chain and turn it the other direction and then work on it from the other way. And the reason I have to have that big a jaw is because it's got to hold, that bead's got to fit in there and hang down. You'll see in a second. Now, if I could find some jaws, alligator jaws that were just compressed better, that would be great. Once again, just lay down a base thread, pinch the jaws, and wrap. There are guys that, from what I've seen in the books, even in the Fly Tires Benchside Reference Guide, they will use an extended body and then stretch that out. This just worked out easier, and it was easier to tie with because I don't have to worry about that other appliance in the way when trying to wrap thread. Once again, I've got my feathers laid out. I'm using that hairline foam thing that lets you lay down your thread, your feathers. And it's just 2 feathers. Preen back the feathers and expose just the tips. And now I'll whip finish a bit. Oh, guess I won't. I'll just be wrapping it with the stems. What I keep catching it on is the split in the jaws. And that's just to be expected. And preen my feathers back towards the tail. Now I like to add at least 4 feathers. And depending on how your feathers and how the density on the fibers, you can make any choices. I just happen to like 4 feathers off of a badger saddle or cape. Get 2 more feathers. Tie it in by the tips and wrap once again. See, I pinch so the stem doesn't move on me, and now I'm just going to whip finish it just to lock it in. Once again, grab the stems and wrap. What's nice about this is that I know that they get larger and larger because I just work my way up the cape. Trim off the excess, pinch, and then lock it down with the whip finish. And once again, a little micro drop of super glue. Now you can make this abdomen as long as you want. You just got to remember how much weight you're using because this sucker is heavy. You know how your mother used to tell you that something would put your eye, take an eye out if you keep whipping around? Well, This one could take an eye out. The other thing you need to remember is that you have to add a little bit more weight at the hook end of this baby, because when you stop stripping it as you pull it through the water, because there's so much weight in the back, it'll sink back to the back backwards instead of sinking forward, which is what it should be doing. So you don't want to add an abnormal behavior to your bait fish pattern. So add that weight as in the way of lead eyes, barbell lead eyes. Once again, tie off. Now, I like these CNF. They're expensive, I won't lie. But they've got that little ring, and also I haven't had a pair of pliers yet that holds 4 feathers as well as these things do. There's some kind of texture inside the jaws, and they just work. And so that's why I've stayed with those. I pinch, again on the jaws, wrap a couple wraps, and then whip finish. Grab 2 more feathers. Mount the feathers, a little bit of wrap, a little whip finish, and once again wrap the feathers by their butt end stems. I happen to like the look of this feather because it's dark in the middle, and as you can see from the opening, it really veils the beads really well, and it just gives it a look that just is incredible, I think. Tie off my feather. Pinch, a couple wraps, and then whip finish, and then the super glue again. All right, one more section. Once again, lay down a base of thread. For now, this is my last section. That stem that's sticking out, that's what you're going to tie your feather, this back end to your hook. And then after you've got it tied on, then you go ahead and add another 4 feathers right behind it to continue it. And then you'll add more feathers on the hook itself. But that stem gives you something to tie the hook to. And since there's no pressure and no hook on this backside, there's no tension and no load being put on this back end. So I've never had a problem with it coming off. Though I will wrap it down with thread and then I'll super glue it. Drop my thread. Pick up my feathers with the hackle pliers and wrap. Now there's another alternative. You could, the first 2 feathers, you can use a different material, such as something like flashabou or some kind of dubbing, or just something that's a little flashier, and then the feathers could go over the top of it and veil it, so they still get glimpses of sparkly, but then again the feather comes into place and just veils it. It's like peekaboo with the flash. Tie off my nub ends, trim, pinch, wrap a couple times, whip finish. Super glue. One more pair of feathers. All right. Tie off my nubs, trim off the excess, pinch the jaws, couple wraps, then whip finish, and then super glue. So as you can see, this is just the abdomen section. And you can see how easy it would be to just add it to a hook, but I just wanted to focus on just the abdomen section on this video. See how, I'll pull it out of the jaw, you'll see how pretty this baby comes out. And you've already seen what it looks like in the water as it goes through the water. And it wiggles. Thank you.